The doctors say it's a miracle she survived. But let's be honest, a miracle would have been if she'd just signed the damn papers before she got in that car. The voice, slick and familiar, slithered from my husband's home office, freezing me in the hallway. I had been on my way to the kitchen for a glass of water, my body still aching from the physical therapy session earlier that day. The door was open, just a crack. A sliver of light cutting across the dark hardwood floor. "Ethan, that's my sister you're talking about." That was my brother-in-law, Mark. His tone was weaker, wavering. "And my wife." Ethan replied, the sound of ice clinking in a glass following his words, which makes this even more critical. "The offer for the company is time-sensitive, Mark. We have 72 hours to accept. If we don't, Apex Corp moves on and the valuation drops by 40%. 40. We're talking about a difference of $28 million. My breath hitched. The company. Stonewood Designs. The high-end furniture brand I had started at 25 with a second-hand lathe and a maxed-out credit card. Ethan had come on board 5 years later, handling the business. I hated the contracts, the finances, the grown-up stuff. Now he was discussing its sale without me. Alara would never agree to sell. Mark said, a note of desperation in his voice. "You know that. Stonewood is her life. It's her father's legacy." Her father's legacy was a bankrupt carpentry shop. Ethan snapped, his patience thinning. "She built this. We built this. And now we have a chance to cash out, to secure our futures, our children's futures. We have one child, Ethan, your daughter, Chloe, and she's at Stanford. Her future is already secure. The point is," Ethan continued, ignoring him, "Alara is in no state to make this decision. The traumatic brain injury, the memory loss. The lawyers say her capacity is questionable. If we present a unified front, you and me, her only family, along with medical affidavits from Dr. Evans, we can petition the court for temporary control of her voting shares. It's for her own protection." I felt the world tilt. Dr. Evans, the kind, grandfatherly neurologist who had been so reassuring. "Don't push yourself, Alara. Your memory will return in its own time. Just rest." Had that been medical advice or a carefully planted suggestion? "Ethan, this is betrayal. She's your wife for 22 years. And for 22 years, I've watched her pour her soul into tables and chairs. While I made us rich, I earned this, Mark. I navigated the recessions, the supply chain disasters, the corporate sharks. I built the machine, and now I want my payoff. And you'll get yours. Your 5% stake will be enough to finally get out from under your gambling debts. Isn't that what you want?" The silence from Mark was a louder admission than any word. So that was it. My brother, the only blood family I had left, was being bought with his own weakness. "It's not that I don't love her," Mark whispered, defeated. "I love her too. That's why this is hard. But sometimes love means making the tough decisions someone else can't. We save her from herself, Mark. We save the company from her sentimentality. We do this, and we all win." I backed away from the door each step, careful, silent, my heart pounding a violent rhythm against my ribs. The aches in my body were nothing compared to the shattering happening inside my chest. 22 years, a partnership in business and in life, a shared bed, a shared daughter, a shared dream, or so I had believed. I made it to the sweeping staircase and sat on the bottom step, the cold marble seeping through my thin pajamas. The grand foyer of our San Francisco home with its vaulted ceilings and the stunning custom-made chandelier I designed myself suddenly felt like a gilded cage. The car accident 6 months ago had been a blur of screeching metal and shattered glass. A delivery truck had run a red light. The doctors had called me lucky. I had broken bones, but the worst was the head injury. The gaps in my memory were like Swiss cheese, leaving me feeling unmoored, dependent on Ethan to fill in the blanks. He had been my rock, my voice, my memory, and all that time he had been measuring me for a coffin. But as I sat there, the cold fury began to burn away the fog of confusion and self-pity. He thought I was broken. He thought I was a confused, fragile woman who couldn't remember what she had for breakfast. He was wrong. Because 3 days ago, while looking for an old photo album for Chloe, I'd found a small fireproof lockbox tucked behind a stack of linens in the hall closet. The key had been on my keyring for years, a tiny, ornate thing I'd always assumed was for something long forgotten. On a whim, I'd tried it. It had fit. Inside, I hadn't found photos. I'd found a separate life, a life Ethan knew nothing about. I'd found the deeds to 3 commercial properties in Austin, Texas, purchased over the last decade under the name Lark Holdings, LLC. I'd found bank statements for accounts he never saw with balances that would make even Apex Corp's offer look modest. And I'd found a handwritten letter from my father, dated 2 weeks before his death, 10 years ago. My dearest Alara, it began. If you're reading this, you finally listened to your old man. Don't let the bastards get you down, especially the handsome ones in expensive suits. A woman's best security is her own secret stash. I taught you how to work with wood, but this is how you build a fortress no one can tear down. This is your Lark Fund. Never stop singing, my girl. Love, Dad. My father, a craftsman to his bones, had never fully trusted Ethan's slick business school charm. He'd seen the hunger in his eyes that my love had blinded me to, and he, in his quiet, stubborn way, had forced me to set aside a portion of my early success to hide it to build a nest egg that was mine and mine alone. I'd managed it secretly for years using an old lawyer friend from college who asked no questions. After Dad died, and as the business consumed me, I'd let it sit, a dormant dragon guarding a hoard I'd nearly forgotten. Until now. Ethan thought he held all the cards. He had my brother, my doctor, and the law on his side. He thought he was about to sell my life's work out from under me and discard me with a pat on the head and a settled bank account. But I held a key to a fortress. I stood up, my body feeling stronger than it had in months. The tremble in my hands was gone, replaced by a steady, cool resolve. I walked back to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and drank it slowly, watching the city lights twinkle through the bay window. Let them have their 72 hours. Let them plot and scheme and think they've won. Tomorrow, a different Alara Stonewood would wake up, the one who fought for every splintered nail and every dollar in the beginning, the one her father raised to be a lion, not a lamb. The game was on, and my dear husband was about to learn that this lark was ready to soar. The alarm chirped at 6 a.m., its sound slicing through the fragile peace of the night. For a moment, I was the old Alara, the one who would stretch smile sleepily at the man beside me and pad downstairs to make coffee for us both. But the memory of last night's conversation was a splash of ice water jolting me fully awake. I was not that woman anymore. Ethan stirred, rolling over. "Morning, honey." He mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. The performance of marital normalcy was already beginning. "Good morning," I said, my tone carefully neutral. I slipped out of bed, my body moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in months. I needed to get out of this house. In the ensuite bathroom, I looked at my reflection. The woman staring back had lines of stress around her eyes and a pallor that spoke of long recovery. But her gaze was different. It was sharp-focused, alive with a cold fire. I applied a little makeup not to hide the evidence of my struggle, but to armor myself. Today, I was going to war. I have an early physical therapy appointment, I announced, walking back into the bedroom and pulling on a pair of comfortable slacks and a sweater. Dr. Evans wants to track my progress more closely. Ethan sat up, his face a mask of concerned husbandry. "Do you want me to drive you? I can clear my morning." The offer, which once would have felt loving, now felt like surveillance. "No, thank you. I need the independence." The therapist said it's good for me. I leaned over and gave him a quick, dry kiss on the cheek, the gesture feeling like a lie on my lips. "I'll be fine." His smile was tight, but he nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need, Alara. An hour later, I was not in a physical therapist's office. I was sitting in a sleek, modern coffee shop in the financial district, across from a woman with a severe black bob and eyes that missed nothing. Miranda Chen had been my roommate at Stanford, a ferociously intelligent law student who had once threatened to sue our landlord over a broken heater. She was now one of the most feared corporate litigators in California. Alara. She set her voice a low, calm contrast to the roaring in my ears. You look like hell warmed over. A genuine wry smile touched my lips for the first time in days. It's good to see you too, Miranda. I laid it all out for her. The overheard conversation, the plan to sell Stonewood, the manipulation of my medical condition, the coercion of my brother. I showed her the documents from the lockbox, the deeds, the bank statements for the Lark Holdings accounts. Miranda listened without interruption, sipping her black coffee. When I finished, she set her cup down with a precise click. "Okay," she said, steepling her fingers. "This is egregious, but from a legal standpoint, it's also perilous. He has a strong case for temporary conservatorship if he has a compliant doctor and your brother backing him. The court tends to err on the side of protection in these cases, especially with a head injury involved." My heart sank. So there's nothing I can do. I didn't say that she corrected a predatory gleam in her eye. I said his case is strong. We need to make it weak. We need to go on the offensive. First, we get you a new neurologist. Immediately. One of my choosing who will do a full independent cognitive assessment. We need a medical professional to testify that you are of sound mind and fully capable of managing your affairs. Okay, I can do that. Second, we need to address your brother. Mark is the emotional linchpin of their plan. He provides the family concern angle. We need to pull that linchpin out. How he's in debt to them. Ethan has him by the throat. Then we cut the leash, Miranda said simply. How much does he owe? I don't know the exact figure. Ethan said his 5% stake would clear it. Miranda made a note on her tablet. I'll have my investigator find out. If we can settle his debts directly, he loses his motivation to betray you. He's weak, Alara, not evil. We appeal to the brother you once knew. The thought of bailing Mark out made my stomach churn. After what he agreed to. This isn't about forgiveness. It's about strategy. Neutralizing him is cheaper and faster than a protracted legal battle. Think of it as a hostile acquisition of his loyalty. When she put it that way, it felt less like a pardon and more like a tactical move. I nodded slowly. All right. Finally, and most importantly, we need to destabilize Ethan's entire premise. He thinks he holds all the power because he controls the company finances, and you are unstable. We need to show him that you are not only stable, but that you also hold power he can't even conceive of. She tapped the bank statements from Lark Holdings. This is your trump card, but we don't play it yet. First, we shake the tree. How you're going to walk into Stonewood today. I froze. I hadn't set foot in the office since the accident. The thought of facing the pitying stares, the whispers, the memory of my old life. It was terrifying. I can't. You can. Miranda stated her voice, leaving no room for argument. You walk in. You hold your head high. You go to your old office. You talk to the designers, ask about current projects. You remind everyone, especially Ethan, that you are Alara Stonewood. You are the soul of that company. Your presence alone will send a shockwave through his carefully laid plans. She was right. I knew she was right. My absence had allowed Ethan to create a narrative of my incapacity. My presence would shatter it. What do I say to him? You don't say anything, she smiled. You act. Be confident, be engaged, be the CEO. Let him be the one who's off balance. Let him be the one who has to explain why the woman he's claiming is incapacitated is currently in a design meeting giving brilliant feedback. A spark of my old self, the woman who could command a room of skeptical investors, flickered to life. Okay, good. I'll set up the new neurologist for this afternoon. Call me after your visit to Stonewood. She leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. Alara, from this moment on, you are not a victim. You are a CEO undercut by a hostile board member. Act like it. I left the coffee shop with a new spine. The tremor in my hands was gone, replaced by a steady resolve. I drove across the city to the converted warehouse that housed Stonewood Designs. My palms were sweaty on the steering wheel as I pulled into my reserved parking spot, the one that I noticed with a surge of anger had someone else's car in it. I walked through the main doors, the familiar scent of sawdust lemon polish and ambition filling my lungs. The receptionist, a young woman I didn't recognize, looked up. "Can I help you? I'm here to see my husband." I said, my voice clear and firm. "I'm Alara Stonewood." Her eyes widened in recognition and slight panic. "Oh, Mrs. Stonewood. Of course. I'll let Mr. Stonewood know you're here." "Don't bother," I said, already walking past her desk toward the open-plan design studio. I know the way. The buzz of conversation died as I entered the space. Dozens of faces turned toward me, my old team. I saw surprise, confusion, and in a few, genuine warmth. Alara Sarah. My head of design rushed over and enveloped me in a hug. "My God, it's so good to see you. What are you doing here?" "I'm tired of resting, Sarah," I said, smiling warmly. I looked around at the workstations, at the prototypes and blueprints. I see the new ether line is coming along. The sketches look incredible. But the jointing on that leg prototype? I walked over to a half-finished chair, my designer's eye immediately catching the flaw. "It's too fragile. We need to reconsider the weight distribution." The room was utterly silent. I was not the fragile ghost they had heard about. I was their boss giving feedback. That's when Ethan emerged from his corner office, his face a carefully controlled mask of shock and fury. "Alara," he said, striding toward me. "What's going on? You should be at home." I turned to him, meeting his gaze squarely. The entire studio was watching. Home is where the heart is. "Ethan," I said, my voice carrying in the quiet room, "and my heart has always been right here." I saw the calculation in his eyes, the realization that his plan was unraveling before it had even begun. He had expected a docile patient. He was facing a sovereign returning to her kingdom, and I was just getting started. The drive from Stonewood Designs to the neurologist's office was a blur of adrenaline and grim satisfaction. The stunned look on Ethan's face was etched behind my eyelids. For the first time in months, I felt the intoxicating rush of being in control. Miranda was right. My mere presence was a declaration of war. Dr. Isabel Rossi's office was nothing like Dr. Evans' warm, wood-paneled suite. It was all clean lines, white surfaces, and state-of-the-art equipment. Dr. Rossi herself was a woman in her late 40s, with a direct, no-nonsense demeanor that I immediately trusted. "Mrs. Stonewood," she said, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Miranda Chen sent your file. Let's skip the pleasantries and see what's really going on inside that head of yours." For the next 2 hours, I was poked, prodded, and put through a battery of cognitive tests that were far more rigorous than anything Dr. Evans had ever administered. I recited sequences, solved logic puzzles, and had my memory tested with a series of increasingly complex images and stories. The fog that had plagued me for months seemed to lift under the intensity of her focus. I was fighting for my life, and my mind was rising to the occasion. Finally, Dr. Rossi set down her tablet and looked at me, a hint of respect in her eyes. "Well, your cognitive function is well within normal parameters for your age and background. In fact, your problem-solving and spatial reasoning are exceptional. The residual effects of a TBI can be subtle, but I see no evidence of any impairment that would render you incapable of managing your personal or business affairs." A wave of relief so powerful, it made me dizzy, washed over me. "So you'll put that in writing." "I will draft a comprehensive report stating exactly that she confirmed. It will be on your lawyer's desk by tomorrow morning. Mr. Stonewood and Dr. Evans will have a very difficult time arguing against these results." I left her office feeling armored, my steplight. I had a medical shield. Now it was time to deal with the emotional weak link in Ethan's chain, my brother. I found Mark at his apartment, a place that had grown increasingly shabby over the years. The air smelled of stale coffee and regret. He opened the door, his eyes widening in shock and guilt when he saw me. "Alara." "What? What are you doing here?" "I think we need to talk, Mark. Don't you—" I didn't wait for an invitation. I walked past him into the living room. The coffee table was littered with racing forms and crumpled beer cans. He followed me, wringing his hands. "Look, if this is about the company—" "Ethan said you weren't well. He said it was for the best. I'm perfectly well, Mark. Well enough to know that you and my husband are planning to steal my company and have me declared mentally incompetent." He flinched as if I'd struck him. "It's not like that. It's a sale and the medical stuff. It's just to protect you during the transition. Stop lying to me and stop lying to yourself." My voice cracked through the room, sharp as a whip. "I heard you last night. In Ethan's office, I heard him dangle your debt in front of you like a carrot for a donkey." The color drained from his face. He sank onto the worn sofa, burying his face in his hands. "You don't understand, Alara. The debts, they're not just from gambling. I took out a second mortgage on this place. I borrowed from people you don't want to know. Ethan said he'd make it all go away." My anger was tempered by a painful, familial pity. "How much, Mark?" He mumbled a figure that made my breath catch. It was more than double what I had estimated. "I will pay your debts," I said, my voice quiet but firm. His head snapped up. "What? How you don't have that kind of I do? That's not your concern. I will transfer the funds to you. You will pay off every single loan, every marker, every cent. And in return, you will withdraw your support from Ethan's petition. You will tell him you want no part of selling Stonewood or challenging my capacity. You will stand with me." The hope in his eyes was pathetic, but it was real. "You do that after everything. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for me, for Dad. This company is his legacy, and I won't let you two destroy it." I leaned forward, locking eyes with him. "But this is your one and only chance, Mark. You betray me again, and you will be on your own. I will let the wolves have you. Do you understand?" He nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "I understand. I'm so sorry, Alara. I am. I didn't tell him he was forgiven. I simply stood to leave. I'll have my lawyer draw up the paperwork. The money will be transferred once you've signed." As I drove home, a small part of me hoped the plan was working. I had the medical report. I had neutralized Mark. I had faced Ethan down at the office. The fortress walls were going up. But when I walked into my house, the atmosphere was different, colder. Ethan was waiting for me in the living room, a glass of bourbon in his hand, his expression no longer one of controlled concern, but of cold fury. So he said, his voice dangerously calm, "You had a busy day." I didn't answer. I just stood my ground. "A little bird told me you paid a visit to Dr. Isabel Rossi today, a noted neurologist and coincidentally a close friend of Miranda Chen." He took a slow sip of his drink. "Then you went to see your brother, who strangely just called me to say he's having second thoughts." He stood up, walking toward me until we were only a foot apart. The civility had been stripped away, revealing the ruthless competitor beneath. "You think you're clever, Alara. You think a new doctor and buying off your pathetic brother changes anything." He let out a short, humorless laugh. "The Apex Corp offer isn't in 72 hours. It was this morning. I signed the letter of intent while you were playing mastermind. The floor seemed to drop out from under me." He had already signed. "You can't." I whispered, my confidence shattering. "My shares. You need my signature." "I don't," he said, a cruel smile twisting his lips. "Not according to the bylaws. You agreed to when we incorporated Stonewood as an LLC, a clause you undoubtedly forgot. In the event of a partner's permanent disability or extended absence, the remaining partner has power of attorney to execute a sale for the benefit of the company. All I need is the medical certification from Dr. Evans and the family affirmation from Mark. And despite your little field trip today, I still have both." He leaned in his voice, a venomous whisper. "Your little Lark Fund, it's a nice nest egg, enjoy it. But Stonewood, it's mine. I built the real value. I earned this." He turned and walked away, leaving me standing alone in the cavernous living room. The walls of my fortress, which I had thought were so strong, had been blown apart in an instant. He had been 3 steps ahead of me the entire time. He hadn't just been planning this since my accident. He'd been planning it for years. I had the money, I had my health, but I was about to lose the very thing that defined me. The thing my father had left me. I had lost. The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. The cold marble floor beneath my feet felt like the precipice of an abyss. Ethan's words echoed in the vast, silent space, each one a hammer blow to what was left of my spirit. I signed. "I don't need your signature." The bylaws. He disappeared upstairs, the click of the bedroom door, a final dismissive period to our 22-year marriage. I stood frozen, the adrenaline that had fueled me all day leaching away, leaving me hollow and numb. He had won. He had leveraged my own company's legal framework, a framework I had naively trusted him to manage to gut my life's work. The clause. I racked my brain, a frantic, painful scramble through the foggy archives of my memory. The early days of incorporation, a young, ambitious Alara, so in love, so trusting. Ethan had said, "We need to protect the company, honey. If something ever happens to one of us, the other needs to be able to keep the ship afloat." It had sounded so reasonable, so responsible. I had signed a stack of papers, my focus on the next design, the next collection. I'd entrusted him with the boring details, and he had buried a landmine in them, waiting for the right moment to detonate it. A sob welled in my throat, but I choked it back. Crying was a luxury for the defeated, and I refused to be defeated. Not yet. I stumbled into the library, a room I loved, but rarely used its shelves lined with beautiful, unread books. I needed a lawyer, but Miranda was corporate litigation. This was different. This was about the foundational documents of my own company. I needed a shark who specialized in corporate bylaws and partnership agreements, and I knew just who to call. Arthur Pembleton was 80 years old and had come out of retirement 3 times because he was bored. He had been my father's lawyer and friend, a man who believed in the spirit of the law, not just the letter. He was the one who had helped me set up Lark Holdings, swearing him to secrecy even from my own husband. I found his number in my old Rolodex. Arthur refused to use a digital contacts list. "Arthur, it's Alara Stonewood," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts. "Alara, my dear." His voice boomed warm and familiar. "I heard about your accident. Terrible business. How are you holding up?" "I've been better, Arthur. I need your help. It's about Ethan." There was a beat of silence. "I never trusted that suit," he grumbled. "What's he done?" I told him everything, my words tumbling out in a rush, desperate torrent. The Apex deal, the medical manipulation, the betrayal, and finally the clause he'd used to sign without me. He cited a disability and absence clause, Arthur. He says he has the power to sell without me. Arthur snorted. "Let me guess. Clause 14B, the Phoenix Clause." My breath caught. "The what your father's idea. He made me put it in when you and Ethan incorporated. He said, 'Arthur, my girl is tough, but her heart is soft. That Ethan has hungry eyes. I want a backdoor, a way for her to rise from the ashes if he ever tries to burn her down.' We called it the Phoenix Clause." Hope, sharp and painful, pricked at my heart. "What does it do?" "It's a fail-safe, Alara. It's buried in the subtext of 14B. The clause gives the remaining partner power of attorney in case of disability, but it explicitly cannot be invoked to execute a sale of the company without the express written consent of both partners unless the dissenting partner is offered a full buyout at a fair market valuation determined by an independent auditor, not the selling partner." The world slowly righted itself. So, He can't just sell. No, he cannot. He can try to buy you out. But if he invokes that clause, the valuation isn't done by his cronies. It's done by a firm we agree upon. And given the hidden assets and the true value of Stonewood, that number would be astronomical. Far more than the Apex offer I'd wager. He'd have to come up with that cash himself to buy you out, or the sale to Apex is void. It was a checkmate. A hidden checkmate my father had put on the board 2 decades ago. Arthur, I need you. Right now. Can you draft something? A letter? A cease and desist, something that stops this in its tracks? I'll have my grandson drive me to the office. We'll have it drafted and served to Ethan and Apex Corp by 10 a.m. tomorrow. He's played his hand Elara. Now let's show him he's been reading the wrong rules. I hung up my body, thrumming with a new fierce energy. My father. He had been watching over me all along, his gnarled, wood-stained hands, guiding me from the past. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the library, watching the moon trace a path across the sky. I was no longer the victim, the patient, the betrayed wife. I was the heir to a fortress, and the drawbridge was finally rising. At 9:55 the next morning, I stood with Arthur Pembleton, a frail-looking man with eyes of tempered steel on the steps of Stonewood Designs. We walked in together, a united front. The staff had gotten a taste of the drama yesterday, and now they watched rapt as we marched toward Ethan's office. His assistant tried to stop us. "Mr. Stonewood is in a conference call with Apex Corp Good," I said, pushing the door open. Ethan was at his desk, a triumphant smile on his face as he spoke into the speakerphone. "Looking forward to finalizing this, gentlemen. We're ready to take Stonewood to the next level." He looked up and his smile vanished. "I'm afraid there's been a development, Ethan," I said, my voice ringing clear in the room. Arthur stepped forward and placed a thick legal document on his desk. "This is a formal notice of injunction, Mr. Stonewood. Your invocation of Clause 14B is invalid as it pertains to the sale of company assets. Any agreement you have signed with Apex Corp is null and void." A tinny voice came from the speakerphone. "Ethan, what's going on over there?" Ethan's face was a thundercloud. "This is a mistake. I have the authority." "You have the authority to offer to buy me out at a fair market valuation," I interrupted, meeting his furious gaze, "and valuation that will be conducted by Fairhaven and Sons as stipulated in the clause you so cleverly tried to use. Unless you have $50, maybe $60 million lying around to purchase my shares, the sale to Apex is dead." The silence from the speakerphone was deafening. Ethan stared at me, and for the first time I saw not anger, but fear. I saw the realization dawning that I was not the woman he thought I was. I was not broken. I was not predictable. I was Elara Stonewood, and I had just set his world on fire. "The game has changed, Ethan," I said quietly for his ears only. "You're not the only one who knows how to read the fine print." I turned and walked out Arthur at my side, leaving my husband to explain to his new partners why his house of cards had just collapsed. The silence in the car was thick and heavy, a stark contrast to the electric triumph I had felt striding out of Ethan's office. Arthur Pembleton sat beside me, his gnarled hands resting on his cane, a satisfied gleam in his eyes. "He'll regroup Elara," he said, breaking the quiet. "A man like Ethan doesn't fold after one setback. He'll be looking for another angle." I know I replied, my gaze fixed on the city scrolling past the window. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a bone-deep weariness in its wake. But for the first time, he knows I'm not playing his game. I'm playing my own. When I returned home, the house was a mausoleum. Ethan was nowhere to be found, likely licking his wounds at a bar, or more probably in his lawyer's office. The silence was a relief. I poured a glass of water and stood in the kitchen, the scene of so many family breakfasts, so many late-night talks with Chloe, my daughter. The thought of her was a fresh ache. How much of this did she know what had Ethan told her? As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed on the counter. The screen lit up with a picture of Chloe, her smile bright and unguarded, taken on the day we dropped her off at Stanford. My heart leapt, then clenched with anxiety. I swiped to answer. "Chloe, honey, Mom. What is going on?" Her voice was tight, strained, on the verge of tears. "Dad just called me. He said you stormed into his office with a lawyer and sabotaged a huge business deal that was going to secure my future. He said you're being paranoid and reckless because you're not well. The carefully constructed dam inside me cracked. Ethan hadn't wasted any time. He was weaponizing our daughter." I took a slow, steadying breath. "Chloe, listen to me. That is not what happened." "Then what did happen?" She cried. "He said you're refusing to sell the company even though it's a fantastic offer, that you're letting sentimentality ruin our family's security. Is it true?" I could hear the confusion and fear in her voice, the classic manipulation of a child caught between two warring parents. Ethan was using her love for him and for me as a battlefield. "Your father," I said, choosing my words with immense care, "was attempting to sell Stonewood without my knowledge or consent. He was using my accident as an excuse to claim I was mentally incapable of making decisions. He had Dr. Evans and Uncle Mark ready to testify to it." There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. "What? No. Mom, that's crazy. Dad wouldn't do that. He did Chloe. I have the legal documents to prove it. The deal he was so excited about would have handed my life's work over to a corporation and left me with nothing. The security he's talking about was for him, not for you. Your future was never in jeopardy." I paused, letting that sink in. "I have always and will always ensure your future is secure." But why her voice was small lost. Why would he do that? Because power and money are a drug, honey, and sometimes people get addicted. I felt a profound sadness wash over me. I was having to dismantle her image of her father, and it was a brutal, necessary cruelty. I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to trust me. I am not the one being reckless here. She was quiet for a long moment. I could hear the sounds of her dorm room in the background, the muffled beat of music from next door, the rustle of papers. He sounded so sure, Mom, so convincing. I know he did. That's his gift. I leaned against the kitchen counter, suddenly exhausted. "We can talk about this more when you're home for summer break. Just, please try to see this from my side too." "I will," she whispered. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, Chloe. More than anything." I hung up the phone, feeling like a lead weight in my hand. The victory from earlier was now ash in my mouth. Ethan had found my weakest point, my most vulnerable flank, our child. This was no longer just a corporate war. It was a war for the heart of my family. The headache that had been threatening all day bloomed behind my eyes, a sharp, familiar pain. I rubbed my temples, the ghost of the car accident reaching out to remind me of my physical fragility. I couldn't afford to be fragile now. I went to the bathroom and shook 2 aspirin into my palm, washing them down with water from the tap. As I stood there looking at my pale, tired reflection, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Miranda. "Alara, I just heard from Arthur. Brilliant work. You've bought us crucial time." "Ethan's already retaliating," I said flatly. He called Chloe. Miranda let out a low curse. Of course he did. The emotional terrorist playbook, page 1. Listen to me, that's a distraction. He wants you emotional and off balance. Don't let him. We need to press our advantage. What advantage, I asked, the despair creeping in. He'll just find another way. Not if we strike at the foundation of his power, she said, her voice crisp and strategic. His reputation. The Apex deal falling through will have raised eyebrows. We need to give the business world a reason for why it fell through, a reason that paints Ethan as unstable and untrustworthy. How do we do that? We leak a carefully sanitized version of the truth, not the medical stuff that's too personal. We focus on the business betrayal, that he attempted to force a sale against the wishes of the company's founder and create a visionary, that he acted in bad faith, necessitating legal action to protect the Stonewood brand. The vultures and the press will do the rest. It was ruthless. It was public. It would humiliate him in the circles he valued most. Do it, I said, my voice firming with resolve. If he wanted to fight dirty using our daughter as a pawn, then I would burn his professional kingdom to the ground. Consider it done, Miranda replied, and Alara. One more thing. My investigator dug deeper into Ethan's finances. There are irregularities, unexplained transfers to an offshore holding company, the same company that mysteriously purchased a $2 million condo in Miami 6 months ago. The world narrowed to the phone pressed against my ear, Miami. The title is in the name of a Kendra Phillips. The name meant nothing to me, and then it meant everything. A memory sharp and clear as broken glass pierced through the fog of my injury. A perfume sample that had fallen out of Ethan's suit jacket. A floral, cloying scent that was nothing like what I wore. A text message on his phone glimpsed over his shoulder months ago. Can't wait for Miami K. I had dismissed it. K for a client, Kevin or something. I had been so willfully blind. Kendra. The headache intensified a blinding spike of pain behind my right eye. The room swam. It wasn't just the company. It wasn't just the money. There was another woman. There was a whole other life. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the marble floor. I barely heard it. I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white, staring at the stranger in the mirror, a woman whose entire reality had just been obliterated for the second time in 24 hours. The fight for my company was one thing, but now I was facing a truth so devastating it threatened to break me completely. The world dissolved into a nauseating swirl of white marble and chrome. The name Kendra echoed in my mind, each repetition driving the spike of pain deeper into my skull. The memory of the perfume that cheap, cloying gardenia scent was now suffocating. I stumbled from the bathroom away from my ghost-pale reflection and collapsed into a living room armchair, gripping the arms until my hands ached. A mistress, a condo in Miami. The pieces of the last year, the strange absences, the new secrecy with his phone, the business trips that always seemed to run long, they snapped together into a horrifying, obvious picture. My accident hadn't been the start of his betrayal. It had been an inconvenient interruption in the affair that had been going on for who knows how long. He hadn't just been planning to steal my company. He'd already built a new life with someone else funded by the money he'd been siphoning from our shared dream. The pain in my head was secondary to the visceral tearing in my chest. This was a different kind of death. The death of my marriage, of the history I thought we had, of the man I thought I knew. My phone, still on the floor where I dropped it, began to vibrate again. I let it. I couldn't talk to anyone. Not Miranda, not Arthur, not even Chloe. I needed to drown in this truth alone for a moment to let it consume me so I could emerge from the ashes, hardened and remade. After what felt like an eternity, the buzzing stopped. The house was silent again, a tomb for my naivete. I forced myself to breathe in and out until the sharpest edges of the pain receded. Then I stood up. My legs were weak, but they held. I picked up the phone. There was a text from Miranda. Leak is live. Business Insider and WSJ picked it up. Expect fallout. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a browser and typed 2 words into the search bar, Kendra Phillips, Miami. The results were immediate. Social media profiles, a LinkedIn page listing her as a luxury real estate consultant. And there she was, young, blonde, toned, smiling with a blinding, practiced whiteness. In one photo, she was holding a small, yapping dog. In another, she was on a boat, the Miami skyline behind her. The backdrop looked suspiciously like the view from the balcony of the $2 million condo my husband had bought for her. I felt nothing. No jealousy, no rage, just a cold, clarifying disgust. She was a cliché, and Ethan, for all his supposed sophistication, was just another middle-aged man chasing a cliché. This wasn't about love. It was about ego. My success, my legacy, had become an emasculating burden to him. Kendra was a shiny, uncomplicated trophy who looked at him with uncomplicated admiration. She was the escape from the complex, equal partnership he had once claimed to want. The door to the garage slammed open. Ethan stormed into the house, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated fury. He held his phone up like a weapon. "What the hell did you do, Alara?" He roared, his voice bouncing off the high ceilings. I didn't flinch. I slowly placed my own phone on the coffee table, the screen still displaying Kendra Phillips's smiling face. "I protected what's mine," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Something you've been failing to do for quite some time, it seems." His eyes darted to the phone, and for a split second his rage was replaced by a flicker of panic. He recovered quickly, but it was too late. I had seen it. "I don't know what you're talking about," he blustered, but the conviction was gone from his voice. "Don't you—" I took a step toward him. "Kendra Phillips, Unit 3402, the Azure Tower, Miami. Ring any bells it should. You bought it for her, with money from our company." He stared at me, his jaw working silently. The mask was off completely, now revealing the cornered, desperate man beneath. "You've been spying on me." "I don't need to spy. You left a trail of breadcrumbs, Ethan. You got sloppy. Or maybe you just got arrogant. You thought I was too broken to notice." I gestured to the phone. "She's very pretty. Very generic. Is that what you were reducing our entire marriage to, a midlife crisis and a beachside fuck pad? Don't you dare talk about her like that," he snarled, taking a threatening step toward me. It was the wrong move. It confirmed everything. He was defending her. "Or what, Ethan?" I asked, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "What will you do? You've already tried to steal my company and have me declared insane. You've already turned my own brother against me and tried to poison my daughter against me. What's left physical violence, go ahead. It would just complete the picture of the pathetic, desperate man you've become." He stopped, his fists clenched at his sides. The fight seemed to drain out of him, replaced by a weary resentment. "You never respected me," he muttered. "It was always your company, your designs, your father's legacy. I was just the hired help, the money man." "That's a lie you tell yourself to justify your own mediocrity." I shot back, the cold fury finally breaking through. "I built the soul of this company and you built the body. I trusted you with it. I gave you equal partnership, equal say, equal credit. But it was never enough for you, was it? You didn't want to be my partner. You wanted to be my master. And when you realized you couldn't, you decided to destroy me instead." He had no answer. The truth was a room he refused to enter. "The Apex deal is dead," I stated. "The board is already calling, according to Miranda. They're not happy. Your little power play has made you look unstable and treacherous. The vultures are circling Ethan, and they're circling you." I picked up my phone and my purse. "I'm leaving. I'll be staying at a hotel. I suggest you make yourself scarce as well. I think it's time we made this separation official." His eyes widened. "You can't just—" "I can and I am," I interrupted. "You have 48 hours to get your things out of this house. I'll have my lawyer send over the formal separation agreement. And if you so much as try to contact Chloe to spin another one of your lies, I will release every single piece of evidence I have on you and your mistress to the press. I will not just take my company back, Ethan. I will take your reputation. I will take your freedom. I will leave you with nothing but the generic blonde and a mountain of legal bills. Do you understand me?" I didn't wait for an answer. I walked past him out the front door into the cool evening air. I didn't look back. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away from the house that had become a prison, from the man who had become a stranger. As I merged onto the freeway heading toward a boutique hotel in the city, I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel rage. I felt a profound, unshakable certainty. The last vestige of the old Alara, the one who loved and trusted Ethan, was gone. In her place was someone harder, smarter, and utterly fearless. The battle for Stonewood was almost won, but the war for my life was just beginning, and for the first time I knew without a doubt that I was going to win. The hotel suite was a sterile, beautiful box high above the city. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window watching the lights of San Francisco twinkle like a bed of scattered diamonds. There was no peace in the view, only a vast, cold expanse that mirrored the emptiness inside me. The confrontation with Ethan had been a necessary exorcism, but it left me feeling hollowed out, a shell of a person standing in a silent, rented room. My phone buzzed incessantly. Miranda Arthur unknown numbers, likely from the press. I ignored them all. I needed a moment to breathe, to let the dust settle and see the new landscape of my life. But the silence was a trap. In the quiet, the image of Kendra's smiling face and the scent of gardenias haunted me. It was the petty personal nature of the betrayal that cut the deepest. The corporate theft was almost abstract, a game of numbers and contracts. This was a fist to the heart. A memory unbidden surfaced. My father in his workshop teaching a teenage me how to do a dovetail joint. The strength, Alara, isn't in the glue. It's in the interlocking pieces. They hold each other up. A good marriage is like that. It's not about passion. It's about two people who are cut to fit together, who support each other's weight. Ethan and I had stopped being interlocking pieces years ago. We had become two separate boards nailed together for appearance's sake until the rusted nails had finally given way. I picked up the phone and called the one person I knew would understand loss. Arthur. I said, my voice rough with unshed tears. I'm sorry to call so late. Nonsense, my dear. His voice was a comforting rasp. I was just reviewing the separation agreement. It's a brutal piece of work. Miranda outdid herself. It's not that I said struggling to find the words. It's the other woman, the condo. I knew he was greedy. I knew he was ambitious. But I never thought he was common. Arthur was silent for a moment. The most dangerous predators, Alara, are often the most mundane. They're not monsters from myth. They're mediocre men with inflated egos. Don't give this more weight than it deserves. It's just the final, sordid detail in a story that was already written. His words were a balm. He was right. Kendra was a symptom, not the disease. What do I do now, Arthur? I've stopped the sale. I've exposed him. I've left the house. What comes next? What you've always done, my dear, he said gently. You build. You have your company back. Now you must decide what to build with it. He was right. Saving Stonewood from Ethan was just the first step. I had to save it from the poison he'd injected into its veins. I had to save myself from becoming a bitter woman defined only by her husband's betrayal. I ended the call with Arthur and finally dialed Miranda. Alara, thank God. The fallout is immense. The board is in an uproar. They're demanding an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Ethan's trying to rally support, but he's leaking allies by the hour. Good, I said, my voice finding its steel again. Schedule the meeting. I'll be there. And what are you going to tell them? The truth. My version of it. The next morning, I walked into the Stonewood boardroom for the first time in over a year. The long, polished table was surrounded by the faces of men and women I had known for decades. They looked at me with a mixture of pity, curiosity, and fear. Ethan sat at the far end, looking like he hadn't slept. He avoided my gaze. I didn't sit. I stood at the head of the table, placing my hands flat on the cool wood. Thank you for coming. I began, my voice clear and carrying. I know there's been a lot of noise. Stories in the press, legal threats, whispers about my health. I'm here to set the record straight. I looked at each of them in turn. 6 months ago, I was in a car accident. It left me injured and with memory loss. During that time, my husband Ethan saw an opportunity. He conspired with my doctor and my brother to have me declared mentally incompetent so he could sell the company you all helped build out from under me. He did this for personal greed to fund a separate life he had built with another woman. A collective gasp went around the room. Ethan stared at the table, his face a thundercloud. I have medical evidence from a leading neurologist proving my full competency. I have legal proof of Ethan's fraudulent actions. The sale to Apex Corp is dead. But that's not why I'm here. I paused, letting the silence hang. I'm here because Stonewood is more than a company. It's a legacy. It's a family. And families sometimes get sick. Ethan's actions were a sickness. But the patient is not dead. I laid out my vision, not just for the next product line, but for the soul of the company. I talked about transparency, about reinvesting in our craftspeople, about launching a foundation for single mothers trying to start their own businesses. A quiet nod to the Lark Fund that had saved me. I spoke from the heart, from the place that had always been the true engine of Stonewood's success. When I finished, the room was silent. Then Sarah, my head of design, began to clap. Slowly then, others joined. It wasn't a roaring ovation. It was a sober, respectful acknowledgement. I had won them back. The vote was unanimous. Ethan was removed from the board and stripped of all operational authority. He was given a severance package that was generous, but a fraction of what he would have gotten from the Apex deal. He stood up without a word and walked out of the room and out of my professional life forever. In the echoing silence of the boardroom after everyone had filed out, I felt the weight of the victory. It was real. It was complete. But the hollow feeling remained. I drove to the one place that had always been my true sanctuary. My father's old workshop, a dusty, sunlit space at the back of the property I'd grown up on, which I now owned. The smell of pine resin and old wood filled my lungs as I opened the door. His tools still hung on the wall, precisely ordered. I ran my fingers over the worn handle of his favorite hand plane. This was the real foundation. Not the company, not the money, not the marriage. It was this: the ability to create something from nothing, the integrity of a well-made joint, the quiet dignity of honest work. I picked up a piece of scrap maple, feeling its solid weight in my hand. I found a chisel and a mallet, and I began to work. There was no plan, no design, just the rhythm of the mallet striking the chisel, the curl of wood peeling away, the slow physical act of shaping something with my own two hands. As I worked, the numbness began to recede, replaced by a fragile sense of peace. The future was a blank canvas, terrifying and exhilarating. I was alone. I was free. I was the sole owner of a multi-million-dollar company and a secret fortune. But in that quiet workshop surrounded by the ghosts of my father's love, I realized I was building something new. Not a table or a chair, a new life. And for the first time, I was the only architect. A year later, the dust had settled into a new familiar landscape. The divorce was final. Ethan had taken his generous severance and his blonde cliché and vanished into the Miami sun. According to mutual acquaintances, the relationship was already fraying under the weight of reality and dwindling funds. I felt nothing when I heard the news, not schadenfreude, not pity. He was simply a chapter I had closed. Mark, true to his nature, had taken the money and disappeared into a life of quiet anonymity in a small town in Oregon. He'd sent one awkward, rambling email of apology, which I deleted without replying. Some bridges once burned cannot and should not be rebuilt. Stonewood Designs was thriving. With the toxic presence of Ethan excised the company's creative heartbeat stronger than ever. We had launched the foundation, the Lark Initiative, and the first cohort of women entrepreneurs was already turning their dreams into blueprints. It was the work that filled my days with purpose. But the true transformation happened after hours in the quiet of my father's workshop. I had renovated it, adding modern lighting and better ventilation, but the soul of the place remained unchanged. The scent of wood and polish was my therapy. I was no longer just a CEO. I was a craftsman again. Tonight, the workshop was filled with the soft glow of pendant lights and the sound of Norah Jones on a small speaker. I was putting the final touches on my first piece since reclaiming my life a chair. It wasn't a Stonewood prototype. It was for me. A solid, beautiful, unforgivingly honest armchair crafted from reclaimed barn oak. Its joints were dovetailed just as my father had taught me. Its lines were clean and strong. It would not break. The final step was to brand it. I took the small custom branding iron from the forge, its end glowing a dull orange. I pressed it firmly into the wood on the underside of the seat, where no one would see it but me. The sizzle and the scent of burnt oak filled the air. When I lifted it, the mark was clear a lark in mid-flight. A soft knock on the workshop doorframe made me look up. Chloe stood there, a hesitant smile on her face. She was home for summer break, and the tension of the past year had slowly melted away between us, replaced by a new, more adult understanding. "Hey, Mom, that's beautiful." "Thank you, honey." I ran my hand over the smooth wood. "It's almost done." She came in, tracing the chair's lines with her finger. "It's so solid." "It needs to be," I said. "It has to hold all of me." She understood. She looked around the workshop at the tools, at the blueprints for the foundation pinned to the wall. "You're happy," she observed. It wasn't a question. "I'm at peace," I corrected gently. "It's better than happy. Happy is fleeting. Peace. Peace you build, joint by joint." She nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'm proud of you, Mom, for everything, for fighting, for building this." She gestured around us. "I was so scared for you after the accident, and then when Dad—" "I was scared you'd break. I did break," I said, meeting her gaze. "But I had the right tools to put myself back together. Your grandfather saw to that." We talked for a while longer about her classes, about a boy she was seeing, about the future. It was easy. The weight was gone. After she left, I finished oiling the chair, watching the grain come alive under the rag. I thought about the long, painful journey from the shattered woman in the doctor's office to the woman standing here now, covered in sawdust and satisfaction. Ethan had thought wealth was a number in a bank account. He was wrong. Wealth was this: the knowledge in my hands, the love for my daughter, the legacy of my father, the freedom to create. The Lark Fund had given me the courage to fight, but it was this workshop that had given me the strength to heal. I moved the chair to the corner of the workshop next to the old wood stove. I sat down the wood, groaning softly, perfectly under my weight. I looked out the window at the stars beginning to pepper the twilight sky. I was a Lara Stonewood. I was 51 years old. I was a mother, a CEO, a founder, a craftsman. I was whole. And as I sat in the quiet hum of my own creation, I knew with absolute certainty that the best chapters of my life were not behind me. They were waiting to be built.